Today, the average person checks a glowing screen over 150 times a day. But what if none of those screens ever connected to anything? In 1969, a small team of engineers in California sent the first message between two computers. The system crashed after just 2 letters. That broken transmission was the first breath of a network that would reshape civilization. Imagine if that breath never happened. Without that breakthrough, the world would still work, but it would work in a way we would barely recognize. Your morning would begin with a newspaper on the doorstep, not a glowing rectangle on the nightstand. A simple question about the weather would require a phone call, a printed map, or patience. By 1989, Tim Berners-Lee proposed a system of linked documents at a physics lab in Switzerland. Without it, knowledge stayed locked in physical places. Every fact you needed lived in a building you had to visit. Every photo you shared existed on paper you had to hold. Business moved at the speed of mail and telephone wires. A single contract could take a week to cross an ocean. The global economy grew slower. Markets closed at the end of the day, and the next morning brought silence until trading resumed. Friendships stayed local. A person in Tokyo and a person in London could not speak in an instant without great cost. And the simple act of saying hello to someone far away would remain a slow, deliberate ritual. A letter mailed from New York to London in 1960 took about 7 days to arrive by ship. Airmail cut that time to 1 or 2 days, but the message still traveled inside a paper envelope. For faster contact, people picked up the telephone. By 1970, around 90% of American homes had one. But every long-distance call was expensive. A 5-minute call from Chicago to Los Angeles could cost the equivalent of $40 today. Most families kept calls short. They wrote down the key points before dialing to avoid wasting time. International calls were even rarer. Connections were unstable, and the price could reach several dollars per minute. Businesses relied on the fax machine. By 1980, millions of offices worldwide used them to send documents over phone lines. A single page took about 30 seconds to transmit. A long contract could tie up the machine for an hour. If the phone line was busy, the fax failed. The sender had to wait and try again. Without email, a contract between companies in Tokyo and Berlin required printing, signing, and faxing back. The process took days. News traveled the same way. Photographs moved through wire services, printed on paper and delivered by truck. For anything beyond these slow channels, people had to go where the information physically sat. In 1971, a librarian named Frederick Kilger built a shared catalog system called OCOG, linking 54 university libraries across Ohio. Without the internet, this network never expands beyond a regional phone line system. By 1985, the Library of Congress in Washington holds over 20 million books, but no one outside the building can search them from home. A researcher in Tokyo who needs a document from that collection must write a letter and wait weeks for reply. Every search begins the same way, walking through a door, finding a card catalog, and pulling a wooden drawer open. The cards inside are typed by hand, sorted alphabetically, and updated only when someone prints a new one. In the New York Public Library, the catalog fills over 4,000 wooden drawers stretched across an entire room. Finding one fact often means consulting 3 or 4 different books, each on a different floor. If the book is checked out, the reader places a hold and returns on another day. Interlibrary loan exists, but it moves by mail truck, not by data transfer. A single article can take 2 weeks to arrive. Knowledge still accumulates, but it sits in buildings, waiting for someone to travel to it. And the people who need that knowledge most are the ones already surrounded by paper, ink, and filing cabinets at work. Every morning, office workers walk past rows of grey metal filing cabinets that stretch from wall to wall. A single department might hold 40,000 sheets of paper, each one stored by hand and found by memory. Typewriters remain the loudest sound in the room. Each keystroke strikes a metal arm onto ink, ribbon, and page. Mistakes mean starting over. A single typo on a contract can cost an entire afternoon of retyping. In 1967, the the IBM Selectric typewriter replaced individual key arms with a spinning ball, cutting errors sharply. But even the best typewriter cannot send a document to another building. That job belongs to couriers and mail carts. Interoffice memos travel in brown envelopes, routed through reception desks by hand, often taking 2 days to cross a company. Meetings happen in person, always. Every attendee must be physically present in the same room at the same hour. Someone takes notes on a legal pad. Those notes are later typed, copied, and distributed one copy at a time. Copy rooms become the busiest places in any office. The photocopier runs constantly, warm paper stacking in trays. A mid-sized company in 1980 might employ one secretary for every 4 professionals, just to manage the paper flow. And when the workday ends, the files stay exactly where they are, locked in cabinets, waiting for hands to find them again. A shopper in 1971 drives 6 miles to the nearest department store because there is simply no other way to browse what is available. Catalogs remain the only alternative to visiting a store in person. Each order requires a phone call during business hours or a mailed form that takes weeks to process. Without online inventory, a store either has an item on the shelf or it does not. A clerk calls the warehouse, asks if more stock exists, and waits on hold for an answer. Price comparison means physically visiting 3 different shops or calling each one. Small towns depend almost entirely on what local merchants choose to stock. A mother needing a specific toy in 1985 might drive 40 miles to the nearest city that carries it. Retailers order their seasonal inventory 6 months in advance, guessing what customers will want. When a product sells out, there is no website offering restock notifications. The next morning, a customer checks the mailbox for a catalog, while the local paper lands on the doorstep with yesterday's prices. A major event happens at noon. You will not hear about it until 6 o'clock, when the television news begins. Radio stations break in with brief updates, but only for events large enough to interrupt scheduled music and talk programs. For anything more, you wait for the morning newspaper. It lands on your doorstep before dawn, printed hours earlier. In 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster took 3 days to appear in British newspapers. Swedish monitoring stations detected it first. A reporter in Moscow filed the story by Telex, a machine that sent text over telephone lines 1 character at a time. If you wanted deeper detail, you visited a library or waited for a weekly magazine like Time or Newsweek, which published each Friday. There was no footage of ordinary citizens witnessing events. Cameras belonged to professional crews who arrived after the fact. In 1989, crowds began gathering at the Berlin Wall on a Thursday evening. Most of the world saw it Friday morning. By the time photographs appeared, the moment had already passed. You read about history, but you almost never watched it unfold. Television networks aired evening bulletins at 6 and 10. Between those broadcasts, the screen went dark for news. The phrase breaking news had a different weight. It meant a network had interrupted programming, which happened only a few times a year. When the news finally reached you, someone else had already decided what mattered. That filter shaped everything you understood about the world, including how you paid for the things you bought. Every morning, bank clerks open large leather-bound ledgers and dip their pens into inkwells. Each account is a row of handwritten numbers. Deposits go in one column, withdrawals in the next. A single mistake in addition means hours of rechecking every line above it. When you deposit cash, the teller writes a receipt by hand and stamps it with ink. There is no way to check your balance from home. You must visit the branch in person. Transferring money to another bank means mailing a physical check and waiting days for it to clear. Bank vaults hold not just cash, but row after row of paper files, one folder for each customer. In 1971, the largest banks in London employed over 12,000 clerks just to keep records current. Every loan application sits in a cardboard folder. A credit officer reads your payment history page by page. At the end of each day, clerks add every column by hand or with a mechanical adding machine. The totals must match to the penny. If a ledger is lost in a fire or a flood, those financial records may be gone forever. there is no backup server. Children grow up understanding that money is something you hold in your hand and counter to counter, not a number on a glowing screen. Every morning, children walk to school carrying heavy backpacks filled with printed textbooks, notebooks, and pencils. Classrooms look much as they did in the 1970s. A teacher stands at the front, chalk in hand, writing on a green chalkboard. There are no smartboards, no tablets, no online quizzes. The only screen in the room is a small television mounted in the corner, used rarely. Research for a school report means a trip to the local library. Students flip through card catalogs, drawer by drawer, searching for the right book. Encyclopedias remain the gold standard for student research. A full set of printed encyclopedias costs several $100s and fills an entire shelf. Teachers grade assignments by hand with red pens, marking each paper one at a time. There are no automated grading systems to speed the work. Homework assignments are written on the chalkboard. Students copy them into paper planners. If you miss a class, you call a classmate that evening to ask what was assigned. Geography lessons rely on pull-down wall maps. Students trace rivers and mountain ranges with their fingers on paper. Science class demonstrations happen live. The teacher pours chemicals into a beaker, and students gather close to watch the reaction. Distance learning exists only through the postal service. Some rural students receive lessons by mail, completing assignments and mailing them back. A typical high school student carries roughly 20 pounds of textbooks each day. Lockers become essential storage, not a convenience. After the final bell, students head home. Without online streaming or video games, their evening entertainment comes from a different source entirely. On a Friday evening in 1985, families across America watched the same television shows at the same moment. 3 major networks decide what the entire country sees each night. The schedule is fixed, and everyone adjusts. If you miss a show, you miss it. There is no pause, no rewind, no recording waiting on a screen. Radio remains the great companion. In 1989, listeners tune in to hear Casey Kasem count down the American Top 40 every weekend. Music reaches the public through printed magazines, record stores, and word of mouth. You discover songs by waiting for them. Movie theaters hold their power as the only place to watch a new film. In 1990, a ticket costs about $4. Films arrive in theaters months before they reach video rental stores. The wait builds a shared anticipation across whole cities. Everyone watches the same commercials. A single advertisement during a 1983 broadcast reaches 106 million viewers at once. Watercooler conversations revolve around what aired last night. If you did not watch, you are outside the circle. Children discuss Saturday morning cartoons on Monday at school. The shared schedule creates a shared vocabulary. Awards shows and live sports draw the largest audiences. In 1993, 133 million Americans watched the Super Bowl together. Entertainment binds people to the same clock, but that same clock also shapes how they find each other in the first place. A grandmother in Lisbon picks up the phone. She dials her son in Toronto and waits while the connection routes through 6 exchanges. The call costs $3 per minute. She keeps it under 10 minutes and writes down what she needs to say before dialing. Every long-distance relationship runs on a budget. Couples split phone bills that arrive monthly, sometimes hundreds of dollars for 2 people apart. Some skip calls entirely. They write letters and wait a week for reply that travels by truck and cargo plane. A letter from Bombay to New York takes 8 days. The sender dates it, and the reader knows exactly how old the words are when they arrive. University students in 1985 carry typewriters to dorm rooms. They write home every Sunday, because Sunday is when mail goes out on Monday. Some families keep a shared notebook. Each person writes an entry, then mails the book itself to the next relative in another city. Physical visits become the only way to truly share time. People save money all year for one trip to see parents, siblings, or old friends. A father in Manila works in Riyadh for 2 years. He sees his daughter once, during a 12-day leave that takes 3 flights to reach home. Photographs travel in envelopes. A new baby, a graduation, a kitchen renovation, all printed on paper and mailed to relatives who cannot be there. Without instant messaging, people lose touch more easily. A changed address or a new phone number can end a friendship that once seemed permanent. The effort required to stay close makes every letter, every call, every visit feel earned, and every form that records a new address passes through a building where paper still rules everything. A citizen needs a new passport. She walks to a government office, takes a numbered ticket, and sits on a wooden bench with 200 other people. There is no portal to check her status. No email will tell her when the document is ready. She must return in person, again and again. Behind the counter, a clerk pulls a cardboard folder from a metal cabinet. Inside are carbon copies of every form the citizen has ever submitted. Every government agency works this way. Birth records, tax filings, property deeds, all live in rows of cabinets stretching across entire floors of buildings. In 1965, the United States federal government employed over 6 million clerks. Without databases, every record needed human hands to move it from one desk to the next. A simple address change requires the citizen to visit 3 separate offices. Each office updates its own paper records, independent of the others. Mistakes are common. A misspelled name on one form does not match the spelling on another. Resolving the error takes weeks of letters and phone calls. Tax filing season is the worst. Citizens receive thick booklets of instructions, fill out forms by hand, and mail them in padded envelopes to processing centers. At processing centers, hundreds of workers operate key-punch machines, transferring numbers from paper into early computer cards, 1 card per return. The system is slow, but it functions. A passport takes 6 weeks, a building permit takes 4 months, a court record request takes a trip to the courthouse. Governments print phone directories of every department, listing which office handles which question. Citizens keep these thick books next to their telephones. And while public servants shuffle paper to keep society running, scientists face their own problem. Their research depends on sharing data, and the mail is too slow. In 1989, Tim Berners-Lee proposed a system for scientists to share data automatically across networks. Without that proposal, researchers remain dependent on physical mail and telephone calls. A biochemist in Tokyo reads about a discovery made in Boston 6 months earlier because the journal arrives by ship and then sits in a library queue. Peer review takes months. A paper submitted in January might appear in print by October, with corrections and debates following in the next year's volume. Conferences become the fastest way to exchange ideas. In 1972, 2,000 physicists traveled to Chicago for a single week of presentations and hallway conversations. But a researcher who cannot afford the trip simply misses the discussion. There is no recording posted online afterward, no transcript shared the next day. Collaboration across borders requires patience. A team in Delhi and a team in Berlin exchange drafts by airmail, each round of edits taking 3 weeks. Data sets stay locked in filing cabinets. A climate study completed in 1985 in Norway might not reach a meteorologist in Australia until someone physically carries a copy there. Replication of results becomes rare. A lab in Geneva cannot easily check the raw data behind a study published in a California journal, so many findings go unverified. The Human Genome Project, which relied on daily data sharing between laboratories in 20 countries, would take far longer than 13 years without networked databases. Young scientists spend hours in library stacks, hunting through printed indexes to find earlier work on their subject. A single literature review can take weeks of manual searching. Breakthroughs still happen, but they arrive alone. A chemist in Moscow solves a problem that a chemist in Princeton already solved 2 years earlier, and neither knows. The pace of discovery does not stop, but without instant exchange, each finding waits its turn in line, and the line moves slowly. A businessman in New York wants to buy 2,000 tons of coffee from a grower in Colombia. He cannot click a button, he must place a long-distance phone call through an operator. The call costs several dollars per minute, so every word matters. The negotiation takes days. Once they agree on a price, the contract travels by courier and airmail. Signatures wait for physical paper. Only then does a ship leave the port of Buenaventura, carrying the beans north. The entire transaction, from first call to delivery, takes about 6 weeks. In a world with the internet, this same deal closes in minutes through electronic data exchanges. Without that infrastructure, every international purchase moves at the speed of ships, trucks, and telephones. Currency traders still work by phone, shouting bids across crowded dealing rooms in London and Tokyo. Prices update through telex machines that print ribbon onto paper, one transaction at a time. The global economy still grows, but it grows slowly. Capital crosses borders at the pace of a dial tone. Money and goods still flow, but the shape of that flow begins to concentrate in a few dense hubs where the phones and the ports sit side by side. Without email or video calls, every office worker must be physically present. The downtown core becomes the only place business can happen. By 1990, cities that lost population in the 1970s begin climbing again. Workers need to live close to where they work. In Chicago, the loop stays dense and busy. Commuter trains run at full capacity every morning and evening. Suburbs do not disappear, but they grow more slowly. A 2-hour commute each way limits how far anyone can live from the center. Retail follows the workers. Since people cannot shop online, stores cluster where foot traffic is heaviest, near office towers and train stations. Malls built in the 1970s and 1980s remained strong through the 1990s. There is no online competition pulling customers away. Parking becomes a daily crisis. In 1985, Los Angeles reports that drivers spend an average of 22 minutes per trip just searching for space. Cities invest heavily in public transit. Buses, subways, and light rail expand because moving millions of commuters by car alone is impossible. The tallest buildings are still offices, not residential towers. Developers build more office space because demand never shifts to remote work. Neighborhoods far from downtown stay quieter and less developed. Without internet-based businesses, there is no reason for tech parks or startup clusters on the edge of town. Cities feel more crowded, but also more focused. The center holds almost all the economic energy, and the edges remain residential and calm. And because every transaction happens in person, a different kind of record begins to accumulate, one that no server can copy or transmit. Your name, your address, your purchases, your medical history, all of it sits in paper files inside separate buildings. No single company can gather records from a pharmacy in Boston, a bank in Chicago, and a clinic in Denver. In 1976, the United States government counted fewer than 200 federal databases holding citizen information. Without networked computers, cross-referencing those databases means physically mailing magnetic tapes between agencies. A 1983 study estimated that merging records across 4 government departments required 6 months of manual labor. Marketing companies build customer lists the old way, by purchasing magazine subscription rolls and warranty card mailbacks. Targeted advertising means sending catalogs to zip codes, not tracking individual behavior across dozens of websites. No cookies follow you between stores. No algorithm builds a psychological profile from your reading habits. Your medical records stay in your doctor's filing cabinet. Your bank statements arrive in sealed envelopes at your door. In a world without databases that talk to each other, surveillance requires people following people on foot. By 1990, privacy advocates who once feared a centralized government data system find their warnings almost unnecessary. The tools for mass coordination have not yet arrived, but neither have the tools for mass watching. In 1977, activists in Buenos Aires printed silhouettes of the disappeared on sheets and hung them from public buildings. Every flyer was made by hand. A single printing press could produce 5,000 copies in a night. Phone trees connected organizers to thousands of homes. Each caller phoned 10 people, who each phoned 10 more. In 1989, East German activists used a single fax machine in Berlin to coordinate protests across Leipzig. Television broadcasts reached living rooms that posters never could. A 30-second segment could mobilize a city. In 1965, the March on Montgomery was organized through church networks and bus schedules printed in bulletins. Underground newspapers in Prague in 1968 were typed on carbon paper, then passed hand to hand in cafes. By 1984, Greenpeace had built a network of 14 international offices, each connected by telex machines. In South Africa, anti-apartheid groups distributed cassette tapes of banned speeches, smuggled in shoeboxes. In 1986, the Philippine Revolution was coordinated through 200 radio stations, calling citizens to a single avenue. Without social media, movements grew slower but lasted longer. Organizers spent months building trust before asking for action. Every gathering required a physical place, and every place required people willing to stand where others could see them. In a world without networks, every patient's history lives inside a manila folder, held in metal cabinets. When someone moves to a new city, their medical history does not follow them. They start over. A specialist who needs your X-rays waits days for them to arrive by mail in a stiff envelope. In emergencies, doctors treat patients with no knowledge of allergies or past surgeries. A 1989 study in the New England Journal of Medicine found delays in record transfer caused repeat tests in 40% of cases. Doctors learn about new treatments the way they have for a century, printed journals delivered weekly by mail. A general practitioner in a small town might wait 3 months to read about a breakthrough drug. Conferences become the main way knowledge spreads. Doctors travel hundreds of kilometers to hear one lecture. Without online databases, checking drug interactions means opening thick reference books and reading every page. By 2020, over 25 million people worldwide worked as software developers. In this timeline, those workers fill bookkeeping, drafting, and clerical roles instead. Entire career categories that shaped the early 21st century simply never appear. Social media manager, SEO specialist, app designer, cloud architect. The word influencer never enters the language. Nobody builds a following because there is no platform to build it on. Without e-commerce, the logistics sector stays smaller. Companies like Amazon and Alibaba never form, and the massive warehouse networks they built are absent from the landscape. Retail stays local. People buy books at bookshops, music at record stores, and groceries in person. The mail-order catalog remains the closest thing to remote shopping. Online advertising never becomes a trillion-dollar industry. Newspapers and television stations keep their advertising revenue through the year 2000 and beyond. The gig economy never emerges. No ride-sharing apps, no food delivery platforms, no freelance marketplaces connecting workers across continents. Banking stays rooted in physical branches. ATMs handle basic transactions, but paying bills still means mailing checks or visiting a teller in person. Data centers, the vast server farms that now consume about 1% of global electricity, are never built. That power goes elsewhere. The jobs that do grow are ones the internet displaced. Travel agents, encyclopedia salesmen, map makers, and library staff all remain steady employers. The economy is quieter, more local, more physical, but something else is missing too, something harder to measure. Without comment sections, public debate moves slowly. A citizen writes a letter, waits days for reply, and thinks carefully before sending. Television remains the main stage for political arguments. Leaders speak in fixed time slots, and viewers watch without typing back. Newspapers set the daily agenda. Editors decide which story leads the front page, and that choice shapes what millions discuss at breakfast. In 1960, the first televised debate between Richard Nixon and John Kennedy drew 70 million viewers. That moment proved television could decide elections. There are no viral clips. A politician's mistake lives only if editors choose to print it the next morning. Letters to the editor become the closest thing to public feedback. Newspapers receive hundreds weekly and publish perhaps 10. Town halls still matter. Citizens attend in person, raise their hands, and speak face-to-face with the people who represent them. Protest movements organize through phone trees, flyers, and word of mouth. Reaching 1,000 people takes days, not seconds. Rumors spread slower. A false story must travel through phone calls and conversations, giving people time to question it. Political advertising stays expensive. A 30-second television spot can cost more than an entire local campaign budget. Voters form opinions over weeks, shaped by nightly broadcasts and morning papers. the pace leaves room for second thoughts. But silence has its own cost. When debate moves slowly, some voices never move at all. Without constant notifications, people developed what sociologists call deeper attention spans. A 2010 University of Michigan study found face-to-face conversations lasted longer when no screens were present. Neighborhoods saw more regular gatherings because nothing replaced the local community hall. Local newspapers stayed stronger, employing reporters who lived on the streets they covered. People knew fewer facts about the world, but understood their immediate surroundings with greater detail. The average person encountered about the same number of headlines in a week that a connected person saw in an hour. Without targeted advertising following them everywhere, consumer choices stayed local and fewer. Children played outdoors more often, simply because indoor screens offered less. Robert Putnam, who documented declining community bonds in 2000, noted the trends slowed without digital distraction. Mental health professionals reported lower rates of the comparison anxiety that came with constant social feeds. Friendships formed slowly and lasted longer, built on repeated physical presence rather than messages. Yet something fundamental was missing, and its absence shaped how people understood the world beyond their horizon. A child with a question in 1990 would wait days for an answer, walking to a library that might not have the right book. A medical researcher in Nairobi, studying a rare disease, had no way to reach colleagues in Buenos Aires within the same week. Families separated by oceans relied on letters that took weeks to arrive, and phone calls that cost several dollars per minute. A farmer in rural India could not check tomorrow's weather forecast or today's market price for his grain. Without instant translation tools, a student in Vietnam read almost nothing published in French or Portuguese. Scientists shared discoveries through printed journals that arrived by mail, meaning a breakthrough in Japan reached Brazil months later. Small businesses stayed small. A workshop in Morocco making leather goods could not sell to a customer in Sweden. Citizens learned about government decisions from newspapers and evening broadcasts, with no way to examine the original documents themselves. A musician with a beautiful voice in a small town might never be heard beyond the nearest city limits. Emergency warnings traveled through sirens and radio, leaving communities minutes or hours behind fast-moving storms. The sum of human knowledge sat scattered across 10,000 separate buildings, each one isolated from the others. Humanity still moved forward, but it moved like a person walking through deep water, carrying every idea by hand to the next person who needed it.